Hi, this is Becky from Kansas. How I Met Your Mother premiered my freshman year in high school, and I loved it from the start. I was at that funny age where you're old enough to start to have a life, but too young to drive, so I spent a lot of time with the TV, especially network sitcoms. I've always loved sitcoms. What I love about How I Met Your Mother was that it was this neat blend of the attractive 20-somethings from Friends, but with that observational writing that matched the show about nothing that is Seinfeld. It's so clever and charming, and it was a rom-com you could tune into every Monday night. And I was now at an age where I wasn't just watching because my parents were watching. This one felt like my show. Well, fast forward to now, my love for sitcoms remains, but I also love podcasts, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who, when I consume media, be it a book or a movie or a podcast, I want to talk about it. So I've taken on a hobby of participating in and running Facebook fan groups for podcasts that I listen to. If you're interested in joining, search Facebook for How We Made Your Mother fan group, or type in your browser facebook.com/HWMYM fans. We'll discuss episodes of the show on Sundays before the recap drops. We'll discuss the podcast episodes when they're released. And it's a place to share any other How I Met Your Mother related content with fellow fans who will understand your references and appreciate what you're sharing. My question to Josh, Craig, and Alec is, what are we calling HIMYM fans? Do we have a nickname? Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
I'm alone. What a pity I won't be soon in New York City. When I see you, please permit me to tell you everything in New York City.
Well, hello. Welcome to How We Made Your Mother. I'm Josh Radner. I'm joined as ever by Craig Thomas. Hello, Craig.
Hey, Josh. Hey, Josh. We're happy to be here.
Craig co-created How I Met Your Mother with Carter Bays, and I played Ted Mosby for 9 seasons on that show. We're rewatching them all. We're talking about it from this vantage point of 20 years on, 11 years on, whatever number we're calling it. We love that share from, was it Becky from Kansas? Yeah, we love that share. What are we calling HIMYM fans?
I mean, HIMYMers, I guess, would be just
HIMYMers?
HIMYMers.
Let's give it some thought, Becky. But
if you think about it, yeah.
it's very meta. You know, we're commenting on this thing we made, and now they're having a group commenting on this thing we made about this thing we made.
I know. And I felt a little threatened by it. I was like, should we cease and desist Becky? No, she seems nice.
No, let's
step on our market share.
No, I love if people would get together.
No, it's the best. It's a complete joke. I love that she's doing that. Please do that. That's the best.
Yeah.
We are honored. It's a show about a show about a show about a show or something, but it's great.
And by the way, in case you didn't quite hear her audio clearly enough, if you're listening to this on audio, on Facebook, that's facebook.com/HWMYM fans. HIMYM fans is the Facebook group. Join in there. They've just gotten it started, so let's flood them with some new folks.
I'm getting on that.
Yeah. So it was so nice to hear also about that tender age of 14. I remember that well. You know, where you want to get somewhere, you're walking. So you don't have a car, you don't have that kind of teenage freedom yet, but you do have the freedom to watch shows and get a glimpse into what it might look like to be a little more adult and what might be awaiting you. This week, Craig, we're talking about episode 7 from season 1 called The Matchmaker. Is that right?
That's correct. And our lovely producer, Alec Lev, is going to give us something about it.
Yeah, so this was written by Chris Marshall and Sam Johnson, and it first aired on November 7th, 2005.
Oh my God, it's a long time ago. That is a long time ago. Let me try to synopsize this very quickly. I'm incapable of doing that. I have to pitch the entire emotional through line. It's basically what I've discovered about myself. But yes, this is another episode about Ted out there trying to figure out how's he going to find the one, and he enlists the help of this matchmaker woman who was featured on Robin's newscast, or Robin's like little feature story, and she has a 100% success rate. And Ted thinks this might be the way to find the one. And the very epic B story, kind of a co-A, and it's through the series, maybe arguably the A story retrospectively
it has
in terms of how much you remember it. It's become the A story. History has proven it to be the A story. Is the story of the Cocka Mouse, the mysterious cryptozoological wonder that is loose in Marshall and Lily's apartment and in Ted's apartment too. But it is Marshall and Lily's B story / now A story, and the two come together thematically at the end of those two storylines. We'll get there.
The Cocka Mouse has certainly lived on in How I Met Your Mother lore. I think it's joined the pantheon of blue French horns and yellow umbrellas, right? The Cocka Mouse.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And there's like little people fans design the Cocka Mouse and send us drawings of their imaginings of it, the way Marshall did in the bar. And it became an all timer.
You know, I have a question. One of my favorite parts of this episode is Marshall and Lily's lecture to people in the bar about the I don't know what to call it, like the taxonomy. What do you call that? Like, like
the physiology, the taxonomy. I know what you're getting. I know what
you know what I mean. Like
I don't have it either.
And also that Marshall is suddenly an expert in this weird creature.
It's so deadly serious, and it's being taken seriously by everyone in the bar.
Yeah. People are really into it. But
it's so funny.
I'd love to get a little deeper into where did Marshall's love of ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot, Cocka Mouses, like where does that come from? And I think I know the answer, but I want you to tell us. I want you to confess to us. Where does that come from?
100% me. I say it proudly and loudly. If I'm flipping channels and there's a UFO documentary on, that's the
you're
rest
not
of
going anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere. We will cancel podcast records for that if I stumble upon one.
Stonehenge.
Stonehenge, Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, Nessie, all of it. I love it so much. And I get genuinely furious when I find that people are too dismissive of aliens, which at one point in this episode, Marshall experiences. You see that sort of rage across his face. Like, what are you talking about? You don't believe... I think it is the most arrogant thing in the world to dismiss the possibility that there is alien life in the universe, as if you know everything in the universe and can count. And sometimes really smart people, smart scientists will rule out aliens or make them sound incredibly unlikely. And then I'm furious at them. Like, I think, even though they know more than me, I'm like, you don't know that though. You don't know that for sure. So I will defend aliens to my dying breath. Well, also, which I assume will happen.
It feels like the Cocka Mouse is almost like a mythical creature, like a centaur or a satyr, right? Like it's a combination of these two things that becomes something greater and weirder.
Yeah, totally. And I will say, this is based on a true story. Courtney Kang, one of our writers, she was already on the pod a few back for Return of the Shirt, her first episode. Writers in writers' rooms pitch ideas, and they go in at different episodes. Cocka Mouse is her life story, but wound up in this other script that she did not write, because that's writers' rooms. And but she was living in New York for a summer. She's not from New York, but she lived there, I think, after college or during college. And she and a couple of roommates saw something that some of them thought was rodent and some of them thought was cockroach. And they had these debates about it. I think it was before everyone had a camera on their phone, because it was like the early 2000s or something. So there's no proof. Fine. There's no proof. I hear the haters out there and the doubters, but it's all real. Courtney swears this happened, and she and those friends, I think, spent years debating what was that. And they decided it really had characteristics of both. Yeah, and so that part was real. Yeah, everything else in the episode invented except the most invented.
You don't have to live in New York City. One of the great things about How I Met Your Mother, you did not have to live in New York City to love it and appreciate it. You could live anywhere, but if you've spent time in big cities, if you've rented apartments, if you've strolled the streets. Living in a big city, you are confronted with strange mythical creatures in your apartment. Yeah. Cockroaches, rodents, there's something just very funny about honoring that aspect of city living. And this could have been a B story in literally any episode. Like it was just, but it was great. And I loved, this is another thing that we could only do because we took 3 days to shoot the show without an audience. Shots from the point of view of the Cocka Mouse, right?
Oh, I love it so much. Yeah.
And also one of my favorite bits is when they throw the Cocka Mouse out the window, it flies. And they almost admire it, right? Like it's this beautiful creature that's finally set free. It turns around.
Jason says line like, I'll miss this private war of ours. It's such a weird line. Because he admires it, because he wants to believe in the Cocka Mouse. As much as it's terrifying to have the Cocka Mouse in your house, it is Christmas morning to Marshall on some level too, because it just proves that the universe is mysterious and awesome, which is one of my favorite Marshall lines.
And again, not to this is what, like, if we were in a college class on How I Met Your Mother, but there's something about it as a kind of metaphor for, like, you know, shadowy things lurk around. It's like our shadow or our you know, dark kind of something that's just like there, and we kind of have to coexist with it. But also it got to highlight. Well, it was very character revealing because it got to highlight Marshall's excitement. I mean, he was still scared of the Cocka Mouse, but he was thrilled, right? He was thrilled by this kind of new discovery. So alive. And Lily was alternately scared, but I think she also, it was a very joint project, right? Like, I love how on board she was. She was like, just like, this is serious. Yeah, this is serious. We have to deal with this. And Robin is all the scientists who don't believe in aliens that annoy you. You know, she's the skeptic. She's the skeptic until she sees it with her own eye holes.
Yeah. She was she was the Mulder or the Scully. She was the Scully, right?
Mindhole also was. This is the debut of Mindhole. It's going to blow your mindhole. Doesn't Mindhole? I think that was a Chris and Phil, right?
Yeah, that's a Chris and Philism for sure. I would almost guarantee that.
Yeah. I also remember when a couple times we had birthdays on the set, and Phil Lord would always try to get people to chant "Face in the cake, face in the cake."
And I wrote you this little ditty to sing to you in New York City.
We'll be right back. Hey, Craig.
Yeah, Josh.
We both got dogs during the pandemic. Is that right?
We did. We grew beards and we got dogs. We're nothing but walking cliches, you and I.
Well, also, I've noticed something about the two of us, in addition to having dogs and having beards.
Yeah.
We don't throw on a suit, much to Barney's chagrin.
Yeah.
Unless we really have to. I would say we lean casual. Would you say?
Lean casual. You want to be casual and comfortable. We both have these dogs to walk every day, but you want to look a little bit cool and you want to be comfortable. It's a hard needle to thread.
Yeah, it's New York City. You gotta turn it out for the people.
And you know what else it does a lot in New York City is it rains a lot.
Oh yeah.
We are the lucky beneficiaries of Vessi sending us some wonderful shoes and rain jackets to try out. And I will say that I just walked my dog in my new Vessis, thank you Vessi, this morning, and they are very, very comfortable, easy to slip on. Like, I'm so lazy. I just want to be able to slip it on. Just goes right on.
Perfect dog walking shoes, right?
Perfect dog walking shoes. You just want to get going and just be out the door and not belabor the point. Really comfortable. My daughter told me they look cool, which was a good sign. And I walked her to school and then walked the dog in these Vessis. They feel kind of like almost slipper-like. They're very comfortable on your foot.
And they're waterproof. Is that true? Like you can walk right through a puddle.
I know. I'm going to go jump into puddles like I'm a child again. I feel like a child again when I'm wearing them.
You know, I tried on my Vessi. They feel great. They look great. But I also, having lived in LA for so many years and now back on the East Coast, I forget it rains here. Like, you need a rain jacket. You need a proper rain jacket.
Yeah.
And they sent a great, very sleek black rain jacket that I've worn a couple times. Kept me dry, very stylish. I'm really digging it. So thanks to the folks at Vessi for sending that on. Your new everyday favorite, Vessi, is waterproof, comfy, and ready for real life. Grab your pair at vessi.com/yourmother to stay comfortable and get an instant 15% off your first purchase at checkout. Embrace every journey, rain or shine, with Vessi. How We Made Your Mother is sponsored by BetterHelp. So, Craig, my wife, Jordana, and I, ever since we've been together, as we're falling to sleep, we each offered 3 to 5 things we're grateful for, which is a really nice way to end the day.
That's great.
Right? To end with some gratitude. And I saw Adam Grant do this little video where he said, even more powerful than gratitude lists are contribution lists, or you say, these are the ways I helped, or this is how I helped someone, or this is how I contributed today. So we do a couple gratitude and then 1 or 2 contributing things, and sometimes I really have to search for the contribution if I'm just a lazy writer all day. I have to go, how did I contribute? Did I hold a door open for anyone? But I asked Jordana, and she's a therapist. She's a psychologist, so she could just say, well, yeah, I talked to people about their problems and their issues for 6 hours today. What did you do?
You're like, I wrote something that might help someone 3 years from now when the movie's made or whatever.
I say, hey, I got you that package downstairs that was delivered.
While you were helping all those other people. I got that package.
But she has it baked into her life. She has this contribution aspect of life baked into her profession, which is so super cool.
It is cool.
And we're both big fans of therapy.
I do it every week. I do it on Monday. It starts my week off right. Talk about ending the day right. That starts my week off right. Think about your favorite leaders, mentors, people you look up to. They don't have all the answers, but what they do have is that they know when to ask questions or seek support from their community.
BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy affordable and convenient, serving over 5 million people worldwide.
Access a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties. Easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost.
Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/yourmother to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/yourmother. And now, back to the show. But there's also another storyline going on, which is this matchmaker that Robin interviews. Camryn Manheim, great, incredible actor and lovely person. Hi, Camryn, if you're listening. She plays the matchmaker who has she claims to have 100% success rate in matching up people. Yeah.
Now, Josh, to ask you this, she does make that claim. Is this the moment? Is this the most pronounced version of this moment where watching this show makes you feel incredibly old? Because this is so only a storyline that would happen prior to dating apps, prior to smartphones. The idea of going to a matchmaker, we might as well be doing Fiddler on the Roof here. Is how old this freaking thing feels.
It's so old, but it's everything old is new again because people are getting off the apps and they're going to matchmakers again.
I was thinking of that too. I didn't want to say that because it seems defensive, we're still relevant. But I guess it's a profession that will always exist. In some way,
sometimes you just have to look at things that have been around for a really long time and question, well, why? Why has this been around for a while? You know what I mean? If something is a perennially recurrent and every culture, I would argue, most cultures has some version of a yenta or a matchmaker, right?
Yes.
And I think it's kind of it's almost like this is too big a decision to leave to the people who it's going to affect the most. We've got to, I don't know that anyone is any happier because we're allowed to choose our partners ourselves, and maybe that's an incredibly traditional idea, but the cultures that have more arranged marriages or the family or community is more involved in the selection of the partner, people seem to think that works pretty well. I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying, I'm glad I got to choose my spouse and everything, but it's useful to interrogate why, and also why Ted would be attracted to the idea of a matchmaker.
I love that scene. I like a bunch of how you played those scenes with her. You guys were good together, you and Camryn. The scene where you start off so skeptical and she just absolutely breaks you down and just in 30 seconds.
The calculator scene is excellent.
It's so good.
It's excellent writing too.
It essentially she's out Tedding Ted, right? Because she's saying, you can plan this. You can construct this. And once she sells him on that, his architect brain just believes it. Because I think that's what he wants to think it's like deep down. He's been actually, since the pilot, been trying to get a little bit away from that. It's Robin, and then he just gets humbled. It's not Robin. And this is sort of like watching him fall off the planner band with the planner, he sort of relapses into planner addiction.
It's a recurring theme. It's basically people will dance. It's look, I don't sit around and think about my wedding, and then he's got this incredible. But it's also this thing of he attempts to be casual, Ted. He's always there's plenty of fish in the sea, right? And then when she crunches the numbers and she says, no, there's 8 fish in the sea, and you're not going to find them without me. I mean, she's a brilliant saleswoman, but yeah. But I also think it's funny when I was watching it, I was like, so this guy's 27. He's got a legitimate career. He's like educated. He's clearly like making some money and opportunity to make more. Why was she able to convince him there was only 8 women in New York City for him? Like, it was a funny sale that he bought completely.
Yeah, I guess her sale is not 8 women that you could hook up with. He could hook up with women, but 8 women, only those 8 could make you happy, which is of course insane, but totally presses like every button in Ted's neuroses. And that's why it works.
I have to recommend something. This American Life, we should list this in the show notes. It's called Magic or Meth. It's a great episode of radio.
What is it about?
It's basically like the question of like, in finding love, do we rely on magic? Do we rely on fate and serendipity and just our hearts will be drawn magnetically together? Or do we, as Camryn does, do we crunch the numbers? Do we, there's a woman who said, I'm only going to date men who have, she actually narrowed her options to get more kind of statistically specific about what she was looking for. I heard I read an article in the Times Magazine a while back, and I think it was about a woman who maybe had she had a dating site, but her whole thing was when people say, you need to, the thing she said, how do you find a needle in a haystack, right? Like, how do you find that person? And her answer was, you burn the haystack down until the needle is left, right? And her whole thing was, you say no. People always say, oh, you gotta broaden your what you're looking for. And she said, no, get hyper specific about what you're looking for. That's actually what you need to do. So she said, if there were men who were in their early 50s saying, maybe I'd want children someday, she was like, goodbye. That's not, we're not going to be dealing with that, right? So I think that one of the things this episode is dealing with is magic or math. It's kind of like the fundamental question of that story with Ted and the matchmaker.
And it's funny, there's also magic in the episode via the flying Cocka Mouse. So there literally is somehow the combination of these incredibly far-fetched things and these incredibly scientific things. And that is the dovetail at the end. I like that Ted sort of says, if a mouse and if a rat and a cockroach can find love, a rodent and a cockroach, like there is some nice connective tissue there. It's sort of like, it's always going to be something insane and unlikely. It cannot be scienced out. Ted's willing to let her keep trying as long as she does it for free. But in the end, it's sort of like I love Ted comforting her. She's bereft and distraught, and she's about to give up all hope, and Ted is comforting her, which I love Ted.
He's ultimately a magic guy who is very persuadable. Like you can freak him out with stats. But he's ultimately a guy who believes in magic. And there was something I found very moving. And I remember liking how you guys wrote this. But there was something moving to me about his pep talk to the matchmaker and his insistence that he was going to be okay. Even though she was kind of prophesying doom for him. He was like, that's not going to be my story. He really...
I really liked that too. Because I thought Ted was very... confident and like sexy in that scene. He was very like, it's the same thing in the Slutty Pumpkin where Barney keeps trying to get him to go to the Victoria's Secret party and he keeps on saying, I'm staying here. Ted is actually not super neurotic and all over the place in a lot of these early episodes. He's actually very confident at times. You know what I mean? Like, especially after the pilot and Purple Giraffe, like he's sort of keeping the faith as everyone else is going crazy. He acts a little crazy in this episode. He does some sort of shady things to try to like, science out what is something magical. You can't win magic by science, I guess, in the end. But he gets so addicted to this idea that within this woman's data is the answer that he does something absolutely psycho. But
yes, the episode is This American Life, episode 766, Math or Magic. And we can put a link to it in the show notes.
Ted is not afflicted by something that afflicted me in my dating life, which was this kind of addiction to options. Right? Like I wanted to meet all the people, I wanted to date whoever I was attracted. Like he is so all in on who's in front of him. And he doesn't seem plagued by maybe this is not the right person for me. Like it's so funny to me how certain he was that this dermatologist, because of the math, like one of my favorite moments is like she tells him he has a precancerous mole. And he's just like, and like, he's so like, it doesn't matter. He's there to get her out of this.
Yes, let's get these formalities out of the way.
Let's
See what you really want to say.
I know why you really called me back, you know? Beth Lakey. Hi, Beth. If you're listening, Beth played the dermatologist, and she was excellent. Really funny. I thought she got the tone of that just right. You know, I also love the Summer Breeze runner is really funny.
Oh my God. That was very funny. The way you just desperately start to try to sing that again. As
if that's going to work.
That was really funny.
Yeah. I mean, I think you guys let up on some of the Ted, you know, obsession with finding the right person. I think it was a first season note that you hit maybe every other episode or every, you know, just to remind her, okay, this is about watching a guy lost in New York City looking to meet a woman that he can have a family with and spend his life with. But ultimately, it was the area of the arena of concern got broadened. But especially in these first episodes, you really come back to this thing of like, this is a guy who wants to meet someone.
It was occurring to me that on the other like great dating shows, the Friends and Seinfeld, even back to Cheers, that like the stakes of each date were always fairly low. You know, would Joey date that girl and would it work out? Would Sam date that girl and would it work out? And in these first 7 episodes, you just take the level of difficulty really high right away. It's will his entire life change because of this one moment here?
Yeah, but I like Josh was like in series you can't play that card every time. And the mania of Ted, even in this one, is sort of like we couldn't sustain that. We had to hit some pockets where Ted was just dating women, and not everything was the most important thing. But I think you're right, Josh. I think we were just trying to make. This was the 7th episode, right? 7th episode, Alec, right? So we're just trying to sell people on what the hell this thing is, right? We're trying to get viewers. And you know we were a pretty serialized show for a sitcom. And I think we were encouraged at every turn to kind of like resell the premise. But then at a certain point, you like, every episode can't be the world's going to blow up, right? There need to be different stakes of different episodes. And we got there. But at episode 7, we're still kind of showing you the central drive of the show. And Ted is pretty manic about trying to get that central drive to happen when he steals this woman's information.
Yeah, it was also funny to me, like in pursuit, like all's fair in love for Ted. Like he's unethical. Like he'll steal blue French horns. He'll steal data from a woman's computer. Like he's very, he grants himself like a wide berth in terms of like acceptable behavior.
It's really true. Zero guilt about whoever this guy is that she's marrying, really.
Yeah.
She says I'm getting married Saturday, goes, Friday?
Yeah.
Can we hang out Friday? You played that so great. That's one of my favorite jokes of the episode. And that was an act break blow, I think. That's a very actual funny joke to go out on. It doesn't always happen at these act breaks. And so, yeah, very remorseless, out there throwing elbows, totally cold-blooded killer there, Ted. He's just like, I don't know. Yeah. He thinks he's better than the other guy because the numbers.
You know what I thought was?
He is.
You know what I thought was clever though was how the matchmaker completely sees through Barney.
I loved that. That is a great Camryn Manheim moment. She's so good at seeing right, acting like she's buying it, and then absolutely eviscerating.
Also,
that was great.
One of the great How I Met Your Mother names. Jack Package.
Yeah, Jack Package.
Jacques Package.
It's pronounced
Package is so funny.
It's so good. That is such a good line.
But I also like it in some ways it's a really great way to establish her credibility. Like she sees through Barney, which Ted is not sure that everyone will, because often people don't. And it recruits him to trust her, right?
Yeah, it does.
And she can size him up pretty quickly. She's like, I can work with, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the moment she seems legitimate to Ted. And there's like a little cutaway moment where you play that. You play that exact moment where it's like, wait a second, maybe this woman is onto something.
Right.
Well, she was
also,
great.
A great salesperson convinces you that you'd be a fool not to use their product or do this thing. And she really sells him in a great way. Yeah.
You know what else I know? I'm going to own a thing that I think could have been better in this episode, which is to say, think about this. Barney, after the great the package, that scene, he has nothing to do the whole rest of the episode. Camryn Manheim sends him walking off into I don't have a storyland. And not that every single episode of How I Met Your Mother was like 5 robust, full stories, but usually at least if someone was minor, they kind of had like a take or an attitude or a little runner. I was very struck by like, we really hung Barney out to dry as soon as he's kicked out of Ted's storyline and then just floats around in this kind of like limbo ether for the rest of the episode. He has a couple of funny lines, but I was like, boy, we did not challenge ourselves to come up with like a new game for Barney after that, which I think later in series we probably would have. It felt a little young to me. It felt like, no, everybody should have a thing, even if it's a small thing. They should have a thing. The thing shouldn't end on page 10 out of a 47-page script. And so, yeah, I thought that could that could have been a little better. But yeah, you and Camryn were great. Had you guys ever worked together before, or was that your first time working together? So you guys had a nice little chemistry.
Yeah, I knew Camryn because she went to NYU to the grad acting program before I was there.
Yeah, okay.
And we had this wonderful teacher named Joanna Merlin who passed away last year, who was just the best. And she was this legendary actress. She was the one of the dance teachers in Fame. She was the original Seidel in Fiddler on the Roof on Broadway.
So cool.
And then,
it all comes back to Fiddler on the Roof. It's the second Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah. Speaking of matchmakers, that's so funny. That's weird. Then she was a casting director while she was an actor, and she cast all of the great Stephen Sondheim musicals of the 70s. Like she cast all of them, like Company, Pacific Overtures, Follies, Sweeney Todd. Is
there a conflict of interest there, being a casting director while you're an actor?
I don't know. We might have talked about it, how she navigated that. But she taught us a career class at NYU, which is like our third year, like how to navigate the business of agents and casting directors and auditions. What a
smart class.
Yeah. And it was
great idea for a class.
It was great. And she brought Camryn in, who at that time, Camryn would come every single year and she would talk to us for like 90 minutes or whatever about how she navigated being a young actor. Because Camryn, she got out of NYU, she didn't get an agent. And how she built this really powerhouse career. And it was especially comforting for people who got out of NYU kind of without agents or representation that wasn't helping them very much. She showed you, I took such copious notes, and I told her over the years when I would run into her, I'd say, your talk at NYU helped me almost more than anything that I learned at that school.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
I didn't remember that. I knew there was some like blurry memory of you guys having an overlap.
Yeah.
But the idea that you were that young Josh Radnor in that audience, now you're doing scenes with her.
Exactly. And then I ended up as the star of a TV show that she guest starred on. I mean, it's
really cool.
It was great. It was great.
Do you know what else that Camryn did to support herself in her early years? Camryn was a sign language interpreter.
Oh, is that right? I think I did know that.
Which our producer, Alec Lev, is also a professional sign language interpreter on one of his many hats.
She and I have crossed paths over that. And the fact that her child was a student of my wife's at school.
Oh my gosh. Ago.
Wow. The simulation is running out of ideas. Everything's folding in on itself.
Her son, Milo, is an actor now, Milo Manheim, and he was on Disney shows, and he was just in a performance here of American Idiot with a cast of deaf and hearing actors that I was working on.
Because he knows science so well from his mom.
He actually doesn't, oddly. It didn't translate, but he wound up learning it in the show. But
that's funny. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. That's a small world. Well, hello, Camryn. Hello, Milo. You guys were great. I forgot that. That's so cool, Josh. I love those moments where somebody like that you were just like looking up to, you're now head to head in these great
I was
scenes
also
together.
telling someone a story about, I was really into, when I was at NYU and even before, I would go to like Shakespeare and Company or the drama bookshop, and I would find all these like career books, like advice for young actors, like how to get an agent, how to talk to casting directors, how to audition. Like I did a lot of research in that just because I was from Ohio. I didn't know. I needed to learn, and I wanted to have a career. Yeah. And there was this woman, Kay Callan, who wrote these books that were so helpful to me. And she ended up on How I Met Your Mother as, I think, Lily's grandma.
I was just going to say Kay Callan. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think she was Lily's.
She was Lily's grandma,
right.
like season 5 or 6 or something. And I got
really
to tell
cool.
her, like, I read all of your books. They were really helpful to me. So there's really sweet things that happen.
There was moments before the internet, Josh. This is what I find myself thinking about this a lot. Sometimes the other day, like, we try to talk about what writing is like on this podcast because maybe young aspiring writers are listening, right? We get into some stuff. And part of what makes me happy is the thought that someone young who wants to know how stuff is made can hear a little bit about that. When I was a kid, there weren't podcasts, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't a lot of inside baseball talk about how writing worked. And I remember getting my hands on, and Alec, you might have had this too, the script book of Monty Python, the TV series, the book of scripts of all of those episodes and how those guys wrote those scripts. And it was just like little British screenplays of the Monty Python episodes. And I got the same for Fawlty Towers, which is an amazing British sitcom you youngins should go check out. And just what a message in a bottle those things were before there were all these other ways to find out. I'm just thinking about like what Camryn Manheim's words to you in that class, in that talk meant, what her writing that book. It's a message in a bottle to your little desert island in the 1990s and when we were kids and stuff. And the amount, how important those things are and the meaning of those things that you find these things and it's like a treasure map. And you just go, oh, maybe if I go this way, I'll get towards what I want.
Well, also art can seem so mysterious. You know, like how did the Beatles do that? And then you get the Beatles chord book and you see like, oh, they put together these, these chords and these arrangements.
We all do.
We're kind of in the golden age of spilling trade secrets, right? Like it's like you can listen to 100 screenwriters talk about how they construct screenplays. And in some ways it's a liberation because there's no excuse. Like if you can't afford to go to film school, you can give yourself a great film education with an iPhone, with five great screenwriting podcasts and filmmaking podcasts. Like there's so many ways you can look at YouTube, how they did different shots and what different shots mean. And and you said you got as much out of Camryn's talk about, that practical like life advice and how she did it. You got as much out of that talk as you did from certain entire classes. I would say this.
A little goes a long way.
NYU trained me to be an actor who already had a job, meaning I knew what to do once I had the job. What they didn't train me to do was how to stay sane when I didn't have jobs or when I was auditioning. And that was what Camryn, her whole thing was about strategizing how to not lose your mind in those stretches of unemployment and when you feel like it's never going to work for you or you want to give up. Like she had a lot of survival skill, like coping strategies that were essential for me. I'm still probably drawing on a lot of them unconsciously.
And this old man, he must admit he fell in love with you in New York City.
And now, commercials.
Well, I'm back.
Where are you back from, Josh?
Yeah, I did a little West Coast swing. Started in Seattle, went down the coast with my guitar, hopping the rails.
Were you playing some kind of music on this
I was playing music, Craig. I'm a musician. I played original songs in a bunch of different cities. Ended up in Phoenix at the Musical Instrument Museum, which was incredible.
That sounds like the best.
Fantastic. And now I'm home for a couple of days. And then I hit the road again. I'm doing a little Midwestern swing. And then, are they called the Mid-Atlantic states? Is that like Maryland and Virginia?
Yeah, Mid-Atlantic.
Mid-Atlantic.
What are the dates roughly? Now we're going not date by date. Just give us a ballpark so people look out for it.
I think I do Columbus May 8th, I think, and then Cincinnati, and then Evanston, Ann Arbor, and then I'm doing later towards the end of the month. I'm doing Annapolis and Philly. And right outside DC.
That is very cool. Everyone in all those places, go look it up. JoshRadnor.com, right?
/tour. JoshRadnor.com/tour.
So we're talking about that, but here's the other question we need to ask. What are you doing with your place while you're doing
What do you mean, what am I
touring?
doing with my place?
I mean, what's happening? Is it just sitting there? Is it just...
Yeah, it's just sitting. It's just sitting here waiting for me to come home.
Just sitting there empty, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So let me drop a little knowledge on you, Josh. You could have made some extra cash while you were away with that empty apartment sitting there doing nothing. You could have hosted it on Airbnb. You're a fool, I say. You musicians flitting around the country.
I feel foolish.
The musical middle class needs to listen to what I'm about to say next. For all of you listening, musicians or non, if you have a trip coming up too, consider hosting your home on Airbnb while you're away. Your home might be worth more than you think. Find out how much at airbnb.com/host. End of commercials. Back to show. Every now and again, I feel like I don't call out the writers enough. We just dive into the content. Marcel and Johnson, really funny writing team, wrote in season 1 of How I Met Your Mother, a bunch of other great shows. I think they might still write on like What We Do in Shadows or have for a bunch of years. They're really funny dudes. So they wrote this. It's great. I just want to give them a shout out and give Pam Fryman a shout out for how she shot this episode. Do you know what I mean, Josh? Like that, the Cocka Mouse stuff, those POV shots from the floor and everyone's running around. And like, this was a funny on mute episode. This passed the is it funny on mute test.
Right.
And like just shots I love. And I think Pam steered us this way. I love how he didn't do the thing of like, and you never see anything about the Cocka Mouse, and the whole joke is you don't get anything. You really basically see the Cocka Mouse in lots of ways, and it's so ham-fisted and stupid. Yeah. Like they throw the phone book on it, and then that big wide shot where you see the phone book scurrying away.
Yeah.
Is so great. I had forgotten about that shot. And I was so delighted that we're not going to try to be too cool for that shot. Yeah. We're just going to do that fucking shot.
But it's a little like
so good.
It's like Jaws, but not.
It's Jaws. I was thinking about Jaws too. It's totally Jaws.
Where it's like the fear is that you don't actually see the thing. It's just the suggestion of the thing. But also the one like quick half-second splat against the window.
The window was so funny. It's like just someone just throws a fucking stuffed animal at a window. It's like they did this whole big mysterious thing, and then it's stupid.
I also remember, I think I was on set when they were doing that. For some reason, I was maybe like I'd wrapped my day. I was passing through. But I remember watching the monitor, and Pam had to talk Allie, Kobe, and Jason like through their eye line because they all had to be looking at the same kind of thing. And I don't know if if George was out there with a stick, like I'm
sure
showing them where it was
on a string or something,
or Dave maybe. But
Dave Baker.
It was so funny and silly.
It was so delightful. I love that storyline. The other thing I noticed about the storyline, in addition, first of all, it is Jaws until then it's just like, here's the shark. And by shark, we mean a stupid little stuffed animal. We're going to throw it a window. It was so demystifying and ridiculously stupid. I loved it. But Allison Hannigan getting to call upon her Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like Willow, like screaming and running from vampires chops, like, she's just good at that. She's just good and hilarious at screaming and reacting in those big eyes. She is so funny in this episode. Just like, and I was a huge, Carter and I both, Buffy the Vampire Slayer fans. My wife, Rebecca, turned us on to the show. We fell in love with Allie. Rebecca said, cast Allie as Lily, and we did. And so I just like, whenever I see, there are these little moments in the show, the You're Dead to Me eyes, a little You're Dead to Me eyes bit later in series, where we just said, let's do what we know works and just steal from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Allison Hannigan playing it up at this sort of horror movie fever pitch. She's just so good at it. Why is she so good at that? And it's funny.
She's a really good actor.
She's just a good actor. Oh my God. And her response to when he said, the only way that could be a mouse is if a cockroach skinned a mouse and wore its skin or whatever. Her like creeped out reaction to that, where she's just like shivering about it. Oh my God. Yeah. She's so funny. And again, God bless Allison Hannigan.
I already mentioned this, but for some reason it's so funny to me that Jason like knows what its diet is. Like he's got a whole, he's the world's leading expert in the Cocka Mouse.
Yeah. How would he have gotten any of those facts? I guess he's made observations around the apartment. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. I remember the feeling was when I was watching it, I was like, Jason likes doing this. This is really fun for him.
He was very into it. For as much as we know about the Cocka Mouse, there is still so much we don't know.
Yeah. But Jason also like,
so funny.
I don't think he'd mind me sharing this. Like Jason also likes ghosts and aliens. Let's be honest. Like he's into that stuff. Like he's not going to pass up the UFO documentary when he's flipping through channels.
Totally. Yeah. Jason and I very much shared that. And that was some nice Marshall connective DNA there for us.
So we are up to the segment of the show that we like to call Questions and Observations from a clinical psychologist and relationship expert who's never seen How I Met Your Mother and also happens to be married to Josh.
I loved how this episode highlighted the question that so many of us have about finding love. Should we rely on science or fate? And 20 years after the show has aired, we live in a world that relies so much more heavily on science. Now, with big tech, with online dating being the primary way we meet people these days, I personally found myself feeling grateful Ted didn't have Hinge, but maybe even more grateful that Barney didn't have Tinder. But it did make me think about how online dating, when it's not working, can feel flat, rigid, and plunge people into despair, like it did the Matchmaker. That said, Ted really held the faith and advocated for keeping the magic alive. And that does seem to be part of his personality. And it made me wonder if maybe that's one of the reasons the show is so appealing to people in their 20s and 30s right now who want to leave some of that data-driven way of dating behind and return to that magic, that mystery, that serendipity.
That is a great observation. And maybe that is part of the show's appeal to a younger generation. I love that theory.
Isn't there like a trend on social media, maybe on TikTok, where there's this like fascination with analog childhoods, like pre-cell phone, like it feels like this lost Eden that you would be not hooked up to your phone all day, that you'd be on bicycles and just have to be home by sundown. And I think even when it comes to dating, and I think what Jordana's saying is that there's this feeling, I don't know how to do this any other way because this is the way it's being done right now, but also this is misery. You know, like I have my friends who are single, our friends who are single, have all but stopped with the apps. Like they're not. There's been a lot of studies on the futility on some level of. There's something like 5% of men on the apps get like 80% of the women on the apps or something. Like it's really rigged for a certain kind of person to do very well, and other people
Barney
and other people are kind of fighting over what's left. And it's like, what's left? That sounds horrible, but you know what I mean? Like, it just feels like there's a dehumanizing effect of it. And even my friends who are lovely people and would be incredible partners for people, they say, I find myself even being incredibly superficial and swipe. You know, you make these quick judgments about people. And I think there is, I've noticed it in myself, not around dating, but in other areas, that like, there's this longing to find some analog peace, you know, to get back with real paper, real books, real newspapers, to put down the screens, to at least, I don't know that we're getting rid of these things, but to at least carve out time that is screen free. It makes me think that, you know, Judaism had a really good idea in the Sabbath. You know, it's like, it's a really good idea, right?
It's very mentally healthy.
Exactly. And I think you can do it any way you want. You could pick Wednesday to Thursday or whatever. It doesn't matter. But I know Elizabeth Gilbert does like phone-free Thursdays, you know? Like, I think we're going to have to start carving out times for ourselves that are not screen-based. And it's our souls are dependent upon it.
Yes.
But
this is a little awkward because today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Hinge and Tinder. This is very awkward.
Yeah.
No, it's so true. And I think there's a weariness to trying to apply science and technology onto literally every moment of our lives. You didn't meet Jordana. You didn't meet your wife via that. I met my wife in real life in college, and like there are plenty of people plenty of people get lucky on an app too, and like get the right kind of lucky, get like actually meet somebody they can be in love with. But like, I think people are weary, and I think people are exhausted. Yeah. And I think they need, and I think that's true. And maybe I love it if that's part of the appeal of How I Met Your Mother. Because when I first watched this episode, like I said at the beginning of this talk we're having, I thought, oh, this is so dated and old. But maybe that's maybe it's not being a whole episode about a phone app is what's appealing about it. Actually.
Yeah. And I think also 2005, when did the iPhone premiere? 2008, maybe?
2007.
2007. So that's a real inflection point. That's what Jonathan Haidt, identifies like 2007 is when the kind of mental health decline started among adolescents.
Yes.
And it's when, Instagram and all these sites where we kind of are comparing other people's outsides to our insides, as they say. So I think it's funny because I had a nothing phone when How I Met Your Mother started, and then everyone had the Trio. Remember when everyone had a Trio?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Neil and Jason were Apple freaks. They were like, when Steve Jobs was about to make an announcement, they were like watching it live. Like they were really into the unveiling of the Apple product. And I'm a late adopter. Like I was never like that. Same. But I remember when smartphones got on set.
Yeah.
And I remember how everyone just got a little more inward, sitting at the booth. But when we were on the show, you guys wrote, you would update. Like I remember Barney had a line. I don't remember when it was from, but he said my peeps need my tweets. Do you remember that?
Peeps need my tweets. Yeah, I do. That was apostrophe peeps. Yeah.
That's where you were like, oh, Twitter's here. I
guess that's the thing now.
That's a thing now, you know?
Totally.
And I think a lot of the show is perennial in that you can watch it, whatever. There's a couple things that dated and that we said some more ripped from the headlines kinds of things. But I think that there's a sturdiness to the fact that they were people in a bar looking in each other in the eye, eating hamburgers, drinking beer. There's just something very sturdy and iconic and timeless about the digital world hadn't subsumed them quite yet.
Yeah. And I think there's something comforting about that. And I've read the same thing, and more so about Friends, like people, maybe young people in their 20s and their teens, like Friends, because there's literally no cell phones really. And there's something comforting about that. And I like how minimally we got into tech. I do like that. Even when it existed, we weren't like every episode was about Ted on his phone or about, we could have done more of that later in series, and we wanted it to be more timeless.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad.
I'm always conflicted as a writer because I want to write things that will be watchable in 20, 30, 50 years. But at the same time, if you want to deal with what life feels like right now, you kind of got to deal with pharmaceuticals and tech and screens, but it also, you're in danger. The technology changes so quickly that you're in danger of really dating what you're writing. Speaking of dating though, just to get back to Jordana's larger point about it really goes back to Math or Magic, which I can't, again, recommend highly enough from This American Life. But, I think that we're always trying to gamify or rig matters of the heart. I think it's in Shakespeare, right? Like this is an ancient thing. Like how do we meet and connect? How do we have sustainable relationships? How do we meet people where we line up? What makes a good match, right? Like a lot of people, I know a woman whose marriage failed, and she told someone I know that she thought, well, we loved all the same music and we loved all the same movies, and I thought that was enough. You know what I mean? Like just because your tastes line up doesn't mean you're going to be able to build a life with someone. And in fact, a lot of mismatches on paper end up being wonderful, sustainable matches. So it's confusing. I understand, and I remember being baffled by, one, if I wanted to be in a long-term relationship, but two, just what mattered, what were my priorities. And I feel for my friends who are single and trying to navigate this science-based algorithm,
One last little idea I just wanted to share, just because it literally just popped into my head. This happened. My son recently had the stomach flu, and he's never watched all that much Mother, but he basically binged season 1 in one long sitting with the stomach flu. Maybe it lasted 2 days. And he coined this phrase that, because he loves Ted, Josh, he loves you. He loves you in general. He knows you. He's performed music on the same bill as you. So he feels like he knows you and loves you, but he's really fallen in love with Ted. And he said this phrase to me that I was heartbroken to think we didn't put on the show. And you tell me if you think we did. But he was praising you and praising Ted. And he said, you know what he is, Dad? He's Tendary. And I went, holy fucking shit. And I really did say that around him and my younger daughter as at the top of my lungs. And I said, so if anyone thinks we use it on the show and can make me feel better about it, I'm sure I could look it up myself.
With great certainty say that we did not. Because
we did not.
It would have stuck. And
it destroyed my soul that we had never used it. And even at the same time as I was so proud of Elliot for coming up with Tendary, because I think that's brilliant. He said to me, Dad, you have to say that on the podcast, because he's also listening to the podcast. So Elliot, I've now said, your amazing joke, Tendary. It is bittersweet because there's no time machine to go put it on the actual show. But
it would have been in a kind of like final Ted Barney scene. It would have been actually like
your heart.
It would have been like a real tearjerker for Barney to call him Tendary.
Oh my God, could have been. Oh my God, see, that could have been like their touching goodbye.
You know, speaking of young genius punsters, my ex-girlfriend had a son, and he at the time was 12. And my dog, Nelson, was a puppy, like very like freshly hatched. And we were all together, and Nelson, for some reason, would just go after this kid's shoes and like socks. Like he destroyed his favorite pair of like skate shoes, you know? And it was a navigation, right? Like I had to work through, having a puppy and having this. But he said one of the funniest puns I've ever heard. And this is a 12-year-old boy. He looks at my dog and he says, "Nelson, we got to curb your enthusiasm."
That's unreal.
Isn't that amazing?
That is next level ninja shit.
I know.
There.
I was so impressed with it.
Enthusiasm.
We got to curb your enthusiasm.
Well, it does not get any better than that. That line is Tendary, and we will peace out on that, I think.
So we've got another wonderful letter written by someone that Alec Lev selected to be this week's. What are we calling? Is this our mail section?
This is our mail section. We have
a new name for this, right? We have a new name for this section. It's called Mailed It.
From Sarah, right? Alex wife's pitching, lobbing in 3-pointers.
All right. Well, this is from Joel. Joel writes, "How I Met Your Mother was first introduced to me in 2009 by my best friend, Ryan. The show had already been on for years, but I never got a chance to enjoy it until he suggested it. He told me it was different than your standard sitcoms that we had grown used to. Of course, it had some of the familiar beats you'd catch from other classic shows, but after watching it and finishing the second season, I noticed something. The heart. The heart that went into this beautiful show was shining through more than any sitcom I'd seen before. This group, these friends reminded me so much of mine, how chosen families grow more common as you get older, and how much the time we all have together should be cherished. I saw a lot of myself in Ted. I wasn't quite in my 30s yet, but I was really excited to find something real with someone. I could feel the frustration he had for being a hopeless romantic and at times quite dumb. Haha. I met my now wife while working at a science museum, which she also was an employee. We hung out a bunch of times and we never connected, but as life goes sometimes, we both went our separate ways, although we did keep in touch. Over the years, we both dated around and thought we found love, then would lose it with others. Once we finally reconnected, we both knew we were meant to be. It was destiny. It was fate. To this day, when we get to the Time Travelers episode where, and here Alec cuts me off, and he wrote in bold, and I won't read what he says here. It's filled with spoilers. And then he goes on. Josh, you showed so much love and heartache at the same time. It's beyond moving. I keep thinking I would do the same thing to my now wife if I could travel back in time to that science museum. Oh, and we were expecting our first child this June. Her name will be Victoria. No, not after that, Victoria. This show still means as much to me as it did when I first watched, and I doubt that feeling will ever go away. Thank you, Craig and Josh, for helping create something truly special that everyone in my family and countless families will enjoy throughout time. All the best, and never forget to suit up, Joel." Thank you, Joel. That is so lovely.
So moving. Beautiful. Beautiful message, Joel. Thank you. It's hard not to dive in and talk about the spoiler things that he's talking about, but I'll just second that what he's talking about. You were really, really good in that scene and that speech. But we won't go into it too much. Get there. It's only the eight short seasons away from right now, or 7.
Yeah, stay tuned. That episode's coming up.
We'll get there. It's coming up in 3.5 years.
I am guilty. Please acquit me. All sins are forgiven in New York City.
How We Made Your Mother is hosted and executive produced by Josh Radnor and Craig Thomas. The show was produced by me, Alec Lev, and our co-producer is Doug Matica. Our audio producer and mixer is Alex Reeves at Point of Blue Studios. Artwork by John Morrow. Please follow, rate, and review the show on Apple Podcasts or your podcast player of choice. It really does help the show. Our theme song is NYC by our own Josh Radnor. Special thanks to Lola Kennedy and Elliot Connors. Visit howwemadeyourmother.com to sign up for our Substack mailing list and for links to our social media. You can also click on the contact page to send us an email or a voice message. Your stories and questions are an important part of the show. Subscribe to Josh Radnor's newsletters on Substack. Read Craig Thomas's published prose at craigthomaswriter.com. And you can subscribe to my Dead Fathers Society, also on Substack. To learn about how you make a difference, this show's ongoing campaign to raise money for congenital heart disease research, check out the Make a Difference tab at the top of our website. This episode was made possible by the support of Backyard Ventures, marketing provided by Tink Media. People will, in fact, dance.
The real question, it just hit me. Am I in love with you? Or just New York City?